By the banks of the Sinuka River, flowing through the fertile heartland of what is now central Ukraine, in the year 1362, two great powers collided. On one side, the Grand Duchy of Lithuania rising, expanding, and bold. On the other, the Mongol Golden Horde fractured but still feared heirs to the empire of Genghis Khan. What happened here would not just decide who ruled these borderlands. It would break a century of Mongol rule in cities like Kiev and Podolia and shift the balance of power in the east forever. This is the untold story of the Battle of Blue Waters. But before we continue, if you enjoy historical videos like this, like and subscribe for more. To understand the stakes of this battle, we must first understand the two worlds that collided. At the heart of the north stood the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, a vast and unlikely empire forged from pagan Baltic tribes and Slavic principalities. In just a few decades, it had transformed from a forest-bound duchy into the largest state in Europe, stretching from the Baltic Sea to the borders of the Black Sea. Its ruler, Grand Duke Algirdas, was not a king in the traditional sense. He was a warrior duke, a strategist, and a statesman, one of the most capable leaders of the 14th century. Though still a devout pagan, Algirdas ruled over a population that included Orthodox Christians, Catholics, and Muslims, a vast tapestry of peoples held together not by faith, but by pragmatic governance and military might. Under his leadership, Lithuania had already absorbed many former Rus' principalities, lands that had once answered to Kiev. Now, Algirdas set his sights even further south, toward the open steppes and the lands still under Mongol domination. The enemy Algirdas faced was the Golden Horde, the westernmost arm of the Mongol Empire. For over 100 years, they had ruled the lands of southern Rus as overlords. Ever since Batu Khan's brutal sack of Kiev in 1240, the Mongols had demanded tribute from Slavic princes and ruled cities like Podolia, Bryansk, and even Kiev through their local governors known as beys or emirs. But by 1362, the Golden Horde was a colossus with cracked foundations. After the death of Khan Jani Beg in 1357, the horde had plunged into a succession crisis known as the Great Troubles. Multiple khans, warlords, and princely claimants vied for power. Civil war tore through the horde, from the lower Volga to the Black Sea. Commanders once united under a single banner now carved up territory for themselves. Among them were three powerful regional warlords who ruled the western steppes around modern-day Ukraine: Kutlug Bey in the Dnieper and Crimea, Hacı Bey near the Dniester and the Black Sea coast, and Dmitry Bey, who controlled areas closer to the Danube. These men were not merely tribal chieftains, they were Mongol-Tatar princes, descendant of Genghis Khan. They ruled Podolia and the Ukrainian steppe like feudal lords, collecting tribute, enforcing Mongol law, and punishing any rebellion. But their world was shrinking. For the people of Podolia and Kiev, Mongol rule had become an unbearable weight. Tribute was extracted relentlessly. Cities were bled dry. And yet, hope was stirring. In the north, the people saw a new power rising: the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, a realm that had already taken in their neighboring cities like Chernihiv, Bryansk, and Pinsk. Some welcomed Algirdas as a liberator before he even arrived. A few years earlier, the people of Bryansk had thrown off their Tatar overlords and pledged loyalty to Lithuania. Now, it was time for the rest of southern Rus to do the same. Algirdas saw his opportunity. With the horde fractured, With their frontier lords ruling like petty kings, the Grand Duke knew that a single decisive campaign could bring an end to Mongol rule in the region. He would strike deep, not just to raid, but to conquer. In the summer of 1362, Grand Duke Algirdas began preparations for his southern campaign. His army was diverse, a reflection of his vast realm. There was Lithuanian cavalry, light and fast, trained in the forests and hills of the Baltic. There were Ruthenian foot soldiers, Orthodox Slavs with centuries of experience in steppe warfare. There were even Tatar mercenaries, former Mongol vassals who had defected to serve under the Grand Duke. All told, Algirdas's army numbered in thousands. Their objective? Drive south across the Dnieper River into the heart of Mongol-held Podolia and defeat the three beys ruling the region. But before turning west to face the Tatar beys directly, Algirdas did something bold. He launched a daring raid eastward, striking deep into Mongol territory and sacking the fortress of Korshev, near the Don River, just days away from the Golden Horde capital, Sarai. It was a message sent across the steppe like a thunderclap. The Mongols had once been the ones who terrified Europe with their long-range raids. Now, Lithuania had brought the war to them. Having stirred panic and confusion, Algirdas then pivoted west, marching across the open steppes of Podolia. His destination, a place called Sini Vodi, the Blue Waters, a confluence of rivers near the modern-day town of Torhovitsia. There, the Tatar beys had gathered their armies to meet him. The final showdown was near. Both sides knew this was not an ordinary skirmish. It was a decisive confrontation, with the fate of Kiev, Podolia, and the future of Mongol influence in Eastern Europe hanging in the balance. Algirdas positioned his army in a wide semicircle, blocking the flanks to counter Mongol tactics. This forced a direct fight, where his disciplined knights and infantry had the advantage. Cavalry and hidden crossbowmen covered the sides, with a reserve ready behind, all designed to withstand and crush the Mongol assault. Across the river, the Mongol-Tatar army stood seasoned by generations of warfare, though no longer at their peak, but still, yet these were veterans of endless campaigns against Russians, Poles, Hungarians, and Persians, and they had left scorched cities across the map. But this time, they faced something new, an enemy who studied their tactics, who came prepared, who would not run. And then the moment broke. The Mongol war drums thundered across the steppe. From the far side of the field, a sudden hail of arrows darkened the sky. It was the classic Mongol opening wave after wave of horse archers galloping in crescent formations, loosing arrows in coordinated volleys, then wheeling away before the enemy could counter. Lithuanian troops raised their shields. Some men fell, pierced by the rain of shafts. But Algirdas's wide, grounded formation held. There was no panic, no breach, no flanking maneuver to exploit. The Mongols tried to bait the Lithuanians into charging, feigning withdrawal on the wings. But Algirdas did not bite. Then, at just the right moment, he struck. With a cry that echoed across the plain, Lithuanian knights surged forward. They smashed into the Mongol front lines like a hammer, spears shattering. It was close-quarters combat, the kind Mongol horsemen hated. Their arrows were useless here, their mobility lost in the crush. The Mongol front wavered, then buckled. At the same moment, from the flanks, crossbowmen hidden among the scrub fired volley after volley into the exposed Mongol sides. These were precise armor-piercing bolts, a devastating counter to Mongol light cavalry. Then came the Lithuanian flanking cavalry, sweeping around in tight formations, attacking from the sides, trapping the Tatars in a vice. The semicircular trap Algirdas had laid closed in. The field dissolved into a whirlwind of violence. Some Mongol units tried to regroup, others began a full retreat. What was once a feigned maneuver now became a desperate flight for survival. Many leapt into the river to escape, many drowned in the ford. Others were cut down as they tried to flee. Some records state that 2 of the 3 Mongol beys died on the field that day. The third vanished into the steppe. The Mongol formation shattered. Their banners fell. Their warriors fled. Algirdas had won. The Battle of Blue Waters was over. With the Mongol forces in disarray, Algirdas pressed his advantage. He moved quickly, decisively. His army advanced through the steppe, encountering no organized resistance. Village after village, some once loyal to the horde, others long resentful, opened their gates. The people were weary of tribute, raids, and rule by distant khans. They saw in Algirdas not a conqueror, but a liberator. Soon the gates of the ancient city of Kiev swung open. Kiev, once the heart of the Kievan Rus, the jewel of the East Slavs, had long lain under Mongol tribute. Now, in 1362, it became a Lithuanian stronghold. Algirdas understood that winning the battle wasn't enough. Lasting control required smart governance and legitimacy. He appointed his son Vladimir as Prince of Kiev and placed his cousin Karyotas's 4 sons, who had fought at Blue Waters, as joint rulers of Podolia. These Orthodox princes were accepted by the locals, sharing their faith and customs. Rather than replacing local traditions, Algirdas ruled through them, blending Lithuanian authority with Ruthenian identity, a brilliant move that secured his victory beyond the battlefield. But while Lithuania celebrated, the news from Blue Waters hit the Golden Horde like a thunderclap. At the Horde's capital in Sarai, rival Mongol princes were already locked in a struggle for power. Far to the west, Mama ruled over the Crimea and the lower Dnieper region, but he was not in Sarai, and he was not a descendant of Genghis Khan, which meant he couldn't declare himself Khan. Instead, he ruled from behind the scenes, installing puppet khans, while he held real power as the Horde's western warlord. When word of Algirdas's victory at Blue Waters reached him, Mama rushed to secure his frontier provinces, fearing further losses and rebellion. But in doing so, he left the capital vulnerable, and while his forces were focused in the west, a rival faction seized Sarai. The Golden Horde fractured even further. The civil war deepened. The Battle of Blue Waters hadn't just freed Ukraine, it had further fractured the Golden Horde from within. And though the river still flows, quiet and blue, the roar of hooves and clash of empires that echoed here in 1362 still shapes the destiny of Ukraine and the fate of Eastern Europe. If you enjoyed this historical video, like and subscribe for more content like this.